Kate. I'm a therapist, and I've been thinking a lot lately about failure. So recently, Corey and I decided that we wanted to use our electric bike, and we wanted to take advantage of this warm weather that we've been having. Corey's been traveling a lot, and we've been working so hard that it was time to take a break, time to do something nice. So we took our bikes downtown and rode around. It was a little scary, but no one died, so that was good. We thought we were gonna go to a park downtown, but it turns out it was not a park. It was a cemetery, and it was the most stunning cemetery I've ever seen in my life. Like, you would not believe this. I felt like I was in the movie Home Alone or like Spider-Man or something, and like it was just so beautiful. You could see the city in the background and the lovely trees that were turning colors in the autumn light. It was just picturesque. But it got me thinking about my past and grief and failure.
So at some point or another, my client come in and they want to talk about failure. Maybe it's a breakup, maybe it's a lost job opportunity, maybe it's something else, but they want to talk about it. And most of the time, I hear things like, I'm not good enough, this happened because of XYZ, it's not going to get better, I deserve this. Things like that. Typically you wouldn't hear, and they don't really make logical sense, but I mean, the negativity just kind of sinks in. And so I thought, what better place to bring you to than a cemetery? And you know, because when you fail, it feels a lot like death, and you just kind of want to lay down and melt into one of these graves at some point. Yeah, just let the leaves roll over you, just disintegrate into the ground. You just feel icky and gross and nasty. But what if I were to tell you that it doesn't have to be the end? In my senior year of high school, I was living with my grandparents, and my grandfather, who was basically like a father figure to me, was diagnosed with ALS. ALS is a very, very cruel disease in which the body's motor neurons start to disintegrate. And this leaves you, well, imagine being stuck in your body, but losing all motor control. You can't walk. You start to be able to not be able to eat. You start to not be able to talk. You now can't communicate, but your mind is still there. It was horrible thing to watch. We did the best we could. The doctors helped. The nurses came in and took care of him. We took care of him. He was fortunate enough to be able to live at home during this time. But after 8 months, he died. And it was at this point that I was kind of lost. I had just lost somebody that was a father to me, and in this pivotal point in my life where I was deciding what I wanted to do with my career, and I thought, why not dedicate my life to healthcare? Why not help other families like me, other kids like me that had dying family members? Heck, even helping the caregivers themselves. I mean, nobody deserves this, but unfortunately we all seem to find ourselves in this situation at some point or another. So I wanted to find a way to help. So that led me to going into healthcare. So the day I left for college was actually the day my grandfather died. It was really tough, and it really put it into perspective for me. I needed to put up or shut up. So I did. I studied for a degree in biology and minored in chemistry and business, and did everything I could to set myself up for success. I worked for my dentist on the summers and holiday breaks. I volunteered at health clinics, and I shadowed a bunch. And no surprise, I was actually good at it. I presented my research at a conference, and I was voted by my peers most likely to succeed. Little did they know about that one. In the midst of this academic success, I was really fortunate to be surrounded by friends that had the same values. The most influential was probably my fiance. I had no clue that somebody normal and pretty average could get into medical school. I really didn't. While I think he's very great, I thought you had to be a genius, you had to make perfect scores on the SAT, and you had to be some sort of child genius. I don't know. I thought you had to be special. And while he is, I didn't think I was. In the year after graduation, I had enrolled in a master's for preclinical sciences, which is a fancy way of saying pre-healthcare. This degree wasn't going to get you anywhere except into professional school. My new classmates were aiming for careers in medicine and pharmacy and dentistry and research and glorious things on their horizon. And I would spend the next year earning a degree while I applied and interviewed for medical school. A lot happened in that year. We got our first puppy, Corey and I got married, and my mental health plummeted. I thought I could hack it until I made my first C. I was put on academic probation, which I was also struggling with depression, anxiety, and ADHD at the time. I struggled focusing on my schoolwork and lectures, and I sought out medication, which I fought so hard to come off of as a teenager. But I was having panic attacks. I was not making the grades, and I needed help. It was time to stop messing around. So I got the help. I took the medications. I worked harder. I went to office hours and study groups. I had a plan, and I was starting to build a foundation of support to implement that plan. But in the end, 2 more C's got me kicked out of the program. That was devastating. Again, my body started to shut down into numbness. I had just royally screwed up, but there might still be a chance that if I got accepted into medical school, I could get a do-over. So maybe it wasn't all for nothing. If I could just hang on until I got an acceptance. That's when the final blow came. My rejection to medical school. In the shadow of my grandfather's memory, I felt like I let everyone down. The shame was overwhelming. But it was at this low point I had a choice to make: succumb or find a new path. The real problem was not failure, but grief. I lost who I thought I was. Maybe you can also relate to losing yourself. The shame, the fear, feeling like you're a waste of space. Maybe you know what it's like to lose expectations of yourself, of others, of a future. While I was lost, I was able to recreate myself again. I happened into the field of therapy because I failed, but I found a natural calling that I excelled in.
Do you remember those illusion books that we had as kids? I think they were called like Magic Eye or something. And you would take it and you would like change perspective a little bit and then you'd see a word or something. We were able to do that a lot as kids, but we also did it in other ways. You can ask a kid like, hey, can you pretend to be a dog? And they're like, woof, woof. And then they get all excited about it. And then you're like, okay, be a cat. And they're like, meow. They change perspectives really quickly. We used to be able to switch back and forth between pretending and shifting perspectives really easily as kids, but somewhere along the way we lost that as adults. And that's kind of the problem we face now. When we have failures, we can't see anything else but those failures. And that inability to shift from saying, oh, maybe this was a learning opportunity, maybe it wasn't a failure, has just completely gone out the window, and we get stuck in our own negativity. So what if I told you that we could be more fluid? There is a type of therapy called narrative therapy in which we retell these stories that we have in our minds. So for example, if we were to look at Cinderella, her stepmom is really mean. She's awful. I mean, she's obviously the villain of the story, right? But if we shift perspectives, retell the story from the perspective of the stepsisters, her mom is just really taking care of the family. She's doing everything she can to take care of her daughters. She doesn't seem to be the villain anymore. So we get this shift from hero to villain and villain to hero. So at some point in your life, you're gonna face failure, loss, or rejection. That's gonna be a natural part of life. But just like you would grieve the loss of a person, you're gonna have to grieve the loss of failure, the loss of what you expected your life to be. It's no longer that, so you are losing a part of you that you thought you would be. While grief can be painful, it can also be transformative. It's not just about mourning the loss of something, but also understanding who we will become because of that loss. When I faced a deep loss in my life, when losing my grandfather and then my dream shattering all over the floor, it felt like the end, but it wasn't. It wasn't the end. It was a new beginning. It was a painful but profound beginning. So we've talked about all these different things. We've talked about how it's okay to grieve, how You're becoming a new person in the face of this grief. We're talking about new beginnings. We're talking about shifting perspectives. But like, you can do all those things. You can do none of those things. That's really up to you. And it's really up to you who you want to be when you face this grief. So you get this choice. You get to decide, am I gonna let this make me or break me? How do I wanna face this grief? Do I wanna face this grief gracefully? That's a perspective. Do I want to be moody and upset and a teenager, just dramatic, woe is me? Or do I want to be like, no, this happened, this is shitty, this sucks, but like, I'm an inspirational person, I'm big enough to hold this grief. Like, wow, that's somebody that I respect. So is that somebody that you respect? Take these tidbits as you will, take them, leave them, that's up to you, but you can choose to be different.